Okay. This meeting of the State of Rhode Island Board of Elections will come to order. It is Tuesday, June 28th. It is just after 2:00 p.m. Before we begin today's meeting, I would like to take a moment to have a moment of silence for Rita Riccardi. Rita was a valued employee of the Board of Elections, beginning with her employment in 1988, and she retired in December of 2014. And during her employment at the board, she worked in campaign finance, where she was an enthusiastic, outgoing employee who enjoyed working with the public. I'm told it was bittersweet when she announced her retirement because she was a bit of an icon here at the board, and she made many friends who always had a kind word for Rita. So at this time, I ask that we observe a moment of silence for our former co-worker, Rita Riccardi. Thank you. Madam Secretary, will you read the roll, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Maderas.
Here.
Vice Chairman Pierce.
Here.
Member DeSimone.
Present.
Member Johnson.
Present.
Member Ramos.
Present.
Member Scholes.
Present.
Member West. Executive Director Robert Raposa.
Present.
Legal Counsel Raymond Concho.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Item number 1 on today's board agenda, the board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, June 7, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Scholl, seconded by Vice Chair Pierce. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, unanimous. Item number 2, the board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, June 16th, 2022. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Scholes. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, unanimous. Item number 3, the board will acknowledge receipt of a letter of resignation from Dr. Isidore S. Ramos and may vote to present a citation for his service as a member of the Rhode Island Board of Elections. This is kind of a bittersweet moment, I think, for all of us. Dr. Ramos and I were rookies together on the board. We were appointed by Governor Raimondo in 2016, which seems like an eternity. He's been a thoughtful and impactful member of this board for his time here. And when he was not away, he never missed a meeting, which was pretty incredible. Could always count on him. He was hardworking, and his presence was definitely a positive influence here. So we would like to thank Dr. Ramos for his time and his service.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I have to say that this is one of the finest boards that I ever sat in, and I sat on many. And I would honestly, it wasn't easy, but I had other things I had to get accomplished in the short lifetime that I have remaining. And so therefore I did my 4 years, or how many years it has been, I don't recall. But I am saying that I'm having a good time out there in the public, working. And I just want to thank everybody for being so kind and their approach for the people of the state of Rhode Island on this board. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Missy. So do we have a motion to present the citation?
I would so move and thank Dr. Ramos for his faithful service and keen judgment while he served on the board.
Thank you.
Well said. Seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Mr. Scholl,
Yeah, I'd
would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I enjoyed working with you.
Thank you.
You're a fantastic person. You always have a kind heart. And you
Thank
always look at what's the best in somebody's soul. So when someone came here, you made them feel at home, and you had a calm demeanor. You made everyone feel at home. and very peaceful. And you've brought a lot of insight to this board, and we're going to miss you.
Thank you.
And we know that you have things to do, and you have many, many more accomplishments to achieve, and wish you well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Johnson.
First, I don't accept your resignation. No, but I just wanted to say as the, coming onto this board as the least tenured member, you made me feel so welcome from the jump. We were seatmates and partners. You always took my calls to give me inside advice and encouraged me to use my voice and trust my own instinct. And so I want to thank you for that. I never imagined how much you would impact my life, and you're not getting rid of me. So you still better take my calls, but thank you for everything.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I just like to say thank you, because when I first came onto the board, I came to some challenge ballot questions, and you provided quite a bit of insight, and it's great to just have that experience and that help on the board. So I thank you for that. Dr.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second to present the citation. We will vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Of course not. It's unanimous vote. So Dr. Ramos, the State of Rhode Island Board of Elections wishes to acknowledge and commend Dr. Isidore S. Ramos as a board member of the State of Rhode Island Board of Elections for his dedicated service. We wish to sign and set our seal in appreciation on the 28th day of June, 2022, signed by myself, Vice Chair Pierce, Mr. West, Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Scholes, and Mr. DeSimone, and also by Robert Raposa, our Executive Director. So thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
Very, very much.
Thank you.
Well done,
Thank you.
and good health and
Yeah,
good
you
luck.
too. Good
Thank
luck to
you.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I guess yes.
Resigned as of today, or is it-
Okay. Item number 4. The board may hear comments on rule and regulation for relocation of polling places, and that is 410 RICR 20-00-26. Bob, would you like to start the conversation on that?
Today's agenda item is to ask anyone that may be present here today if they have any comments or suggestions for before this rule and reg is adopted by this board.
Do we have anyone present here who would like to speak on this rule and regulation concerning the relocation of polling places? Yes, sir. Please come forward. Your name for the record, please. Like we don't know you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Stephen Brown from the ACLU of Rhode Island. I am here to express our organization's support of this regulation and to urge the adoption of it. I know that board staff, Mr. Marcaccio, have worked with one of our cooperating attorneys, Mr. Battistini, to get to this point, and we really appreciate the work that has gone into these regulations. I just want, for the record, to emphasize that there's a reason that these regulations are here. It arose from 2 troubling incidents that occurred in 2020, the last general election in Newport and Woonsocket, where incidents arose very near to Election Day, where polling places in low-income minority communities in each of these cities was moved rather suddenly and without much notice at all. In one instance, this board rejected the relocation that was proposed by the Board of Canvassers in Newport. That did not happen in Woonsocket, but only because it was too late. It was the week before the election that the matter was brought to the board's attention. But everybody at the time, I'm pleased to acknowledge, recognized that this was a serious problem that needed to be addressed. So we're glad that a year and a half later, we're at this point, and we hope that the board will act expeditiously to have these in effect in time for the upcoming elections. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Brown? We appreciate your comments. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Anyone else wish to speak? We do acknowledge the comments also by Director Nick Lima and the Board of Canvassers from Cranston for their comments as well. We appreciate those.
Madam Chair, I have two comments or suggestions, or how we deal with it, I'm not sure. And this is with regard to drop boxes. If the drop box is not located outside the municipal building, and it's only going to be available during hours when the municipal building is open, then it would seem to me the hours of opening should be posted on the drop box so that people will know when they can use that drop box. If someone, and I'm not sure which cities or towns this applies to, but someone drops by there when the building is not open and wants to leave their ballot, it would be helpful if they knew when they could get into the building and leave their ballot. And the other thought that occurred to me, that somehow we need to make clear that a drop box in Cranston is available for a voter from Wisconsin to use for their ballot. And if that's not the case, then we need to make that clear.
Thank you. Actually, the Dropbox regulation is item number 5, but that's helpful, Mr. Pierce, in discussing that matter when it comes forward.
Oh, excuse me.
That's okay. They're very good comments. Any other discussion on item number 4?
Madam Chair, I just have a question for council.
Sure.
Ray, in looking at the publishing of the notice in paragraph, I guess at the end of paragraph 5, when we say that it will be published in English and any other language that is used on the ballot, so it's just for non-English ballots that we may have at those polling places, so regardless of the number? So there may be more than one non-English language ballot. So it's going to be based on the ballots from that polling place?
Right, so to my knowledge, currently, in our state, we only have Spanish as another language. But if, for example, the Hmong language were also in something that was used for the ballot, then the notice of the change of the relocation will be in that language as well.
So it'll be unique to the particular community?
It would be.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so Little Compton, for example, might just have English. Providence may have 2 or more.
Correct. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ray.
But Mr. DeSimone, what you're looking at, what we have before the board now is just, what I've done is I have incorporated your comments from the last meeting as well as other comments from staff, which is redlined here, including what you just mentioned. That, of course, would be up for the board to review and vote on at our next
Right.
next meeting.
So you did incorporate, Mr. Mercatio, the comments that were made, I believe it was Mr. DeSimone at the last meeting.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, both Ms. Chattel did originally create a draft, a working document for that meeting. I revised that somewhat and then added other staff comments. So these are everything that we have to date.
Excellent. So the next step then is to put this on, now that we've had the hearing, is to put this on for our approval, but that comes at a later date, at a later meeting.
Right, at the end of the public session, I think we still probably have more than a week left or thereabouts. Yeah.
Okay, so I get a couple of weeks.
But we had to do it.
No, I get it.
So we have that requirement to do it for,
So the next board meeting.
so the next
this
board
would be
meeting, we
on
will actually look at this and
adopt.
adopt it. Very good. Thank you.
I
Do you have
just have
something?
one question, Ray. On the last section, 26.5, dealing with an emergency. the
26.
language is that the deadline, the deadline, the language that it's extremely difficult to meet under the circumstances. Why do you use the words extremely difficult?
That was proposed by Board Member D. Simone at the last meeting for discussion.
But the use of the word extremely,
Mhm.
just use the word difficult.
That's certainly
Yeah,
something that
my
the,
My only, just to clarify, my only question was with regard to the word impossible.
Yes.
I didn't like
That's
the word
right. Now I
impossible.
recall, yes.
Whatever the
Just a-
board prefers as
Yeah.
to language, I'm just, impossible struck me
I-
sort of as.
I think that could be part of the board's
Sure.
consideration at the next meeting.
Okay.
I
we'll
think
take
the
it.
use of that adverb extremely makes it.
Mhm.
But certainly better than
Yeah.
impossible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marcascio.
You're welcome.
Item number 5, Executive Director Robert Raposa will present an amended rule and regulation on drop boxes for discussion and possible vote to begin the promulgation of the regulation with a period for public comment. So certainly the vice chair's comments, I hope that. would you
Excuse
mind
me
re-
for being previous.
No,
I'm
that's all
sorry.
right. Could you kind of reiterate quickly what you said so that we can make it part of the record for this item?
Yes, in terms of availability of the drop boxes, in general, they are supposed to be located outside of a building, so it would be available, readily available 24 hours a day, but in certain places, apparently, they would be allowed to keep the drop box inside the municipal building, in which case it should be made clear, it seems to me, what hours the municipal building are available for the drop box to be used. So that someone swinging by the town of Cumberland, let's say, and the town hall is not open and the drop box is inside the town hall, it should be made clear to the potential voter when they can use the drop box, which is inside Cumberland.
That makes good sense, actually. We can put that on, we can have that and make that part of the,
My other thought was, I think it should be clear somewhere that the drop boxes can be used by voters anywhere. So for example, as a Cranston voter, if I wanted to use the Cumberland drop box, I could use that
anywhere within the state.
anywhere within the state. It might just say all ballots, all Rhode Island ballots or something like that.
Any other comments by the board
I
members?
just have a question.
Yes, Mrs.
Bob,
Johnson.
How many are located inside that would be?
None
that
of
wouldn't
them
be
are,
accessible?
none of them are located inside because they are all outside the facilities and they all have security cameras upon them. And they are open 24 hours a day.
But the regs permit them to be inside.
That, well, so my suggestion to you might be different.
Okay.
Is that because you, on 1.6A, is that where that's redlined for those boxes established inside the facility?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Do you want me to?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Please respond, sorry.
Okay. On June 7th, 2022, Governor McKee signed the Let Rhode Island Vote legislation into law upon being passed previously by the General Assembly. The signed bill creates a new section of Rhode Island General Law entitled 17-20-22.1, entitled Mail Ballot Drop Boxes. In 2020, during the pandemic, the board had created rules and regulations which allowed the use of drop boxes, which would be owned by the Board of Elections and used by voters to deposit mail ballots for Title 17 elections. The signed law changes embodies a majority of the rule and regulation created by this board back in 2020. But the draft that has been provided to you this afternoon represents changes made by the staff for your discussion and vote. In the draft that you have, 1.1 purpose. And this is clearly a draft regulation that, again, was prepared by the staff and has also been reviewed by your legal counsel. 1.1, purpose. The rule and regulation changes the reference of 172016 to 1720-22.1 due to the passage and adoption of the Dropbox legislation that I previously mentioned. 1.4, Dropbox requirements and locations. But let me back up for a second. In the rule and reg that exists today, on definitions, 1.28 defines the Dropbox shall mean a locked and secure container that shall serve as a receptacle for the receipt of mail and emergency ballots cast by voters under Rhode Island General Laws, Chapter 17-20, during regularly scheduled biannual primaries and elections and special primaries, special elections, and special referendums hereinafter Election Day. Every Dropbox established by the board shall be deemed to be the property of the board and shall be available to the public beginning 20 days prior to Election Day and 24 hours per day, 7 days per week throughout that period. If established outside the municipal building and during the normal business hours of the facility, if it is established inside the municipal building. All drop boxes must be accessible on Election Day from 7 a.m. through 8 p.m., except in New Shoreham, which shall be available from 9 a.m. through 8 p.m. in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 171810 and 171811. That section we can modify to include stronger language that these drop boxes can be used by any voter dropping off a ballot in the state, in
Rhode
any
Island.
location. We can add that to that your suggestion to that section of definitions. The staff has made minimal changes to your rule and regulation. A lot of the rule and regulation that is in front of you, which was yours, has been incorporated into state law under the 17-20-22.1. On the document in front of you, if you refer to 1.6, process for retrieval and delivery of ballots deposited in the drop boxes. This section is modified to delete the reference to drop boxes within the facility's reference, which are located inside the building. All state-owned drop boxes are located outside of each facility, again, because they do have security cameras that are focused on the drop box. And part of this regulation is to change the requirement of keeping the footage from 30 days to 90. 1.6A changes the word from should to must, where each drop box must be sealed and locked. The drop box ballot slot opening must be covered and locked to prevent voters from attempting to deposit ballots after the close of polls on Election Day. 1.6E, upon retrieval of the ballots from the drop box, the Board of Elections agent shall inspect the drop box for any evidence of tampering and we deleted the word note and included the word document any such findings on the ballot retrieval form. The changes that I have mentioned to you are the only changes that the staff has made for the Dropbox rule and regulation that has been adopted with you since 2020. As a member of the staff, after any completion of a discussion by the board, the staff requests that the board approve the changes so that we could start the posting requirements for this amended rule and reg to be adopted.
We have discussion, questions, Mr. DeSimone.
Madam Chair, just with regard to, since we're going to publish this, 1.4 paragraph C, I know we're changing, or the suggestion is to change the storage from 30 to 90 days. We did change it in the number. I just think that the language has to be modified as well.
Yeah.
The word 30 should become 90. So that's one thing. And then with regard to item 1.6, subparagraph A, I would feel more comfortable if the word must became shall. And just because as a term of art, I think shall has a stronger legal connotation, but again, I'll defer to Ray on that. But other than that, I didn't have anything else.
So you would like to, where it currently says should, we cross that out, we change it to must. You would like us to change must to shall?
Correct. And again, I'll defer to Ray on that. If he feels that must is okay, then I'll defer to him on it. Other than that, those are the only two questions I had.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Mrs. Jones.
Bob, 20 days, so beginning 20 days prior to election day, can you remind me why we arrived at 20 days? So in other words, if someone has received their mail ballot, voted, they have to wait until 20 days before. Will they be locked? Can they put it in anyway?
The ballots historically are being mailed about the 20-day mark.
Okay.
And the 20 days is the beginning of the emergency period. And that is to be consistent, I believe, with the emergency period is where the 20 days came from. There is nothing saying that we could not unlock these boxes prior to 20 days.
Okay.
If you, as a board, want us to change 20 days to a larger number, there is nothing, again, that prohibits us. But a lot of times the voters don't have the ballots.
Makes sense.
And if we did decide that, would that have to be it would have to be changed in these rules and regs, correct?
Well, we could, if you're going to vote on authorizing us to post these for the next 30 days, any discussion that you have and vote upon would be included in what we are going to post.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, allowing voters to drop their ballot whenever they have it. I understand that the early voting period and that usually it is about 20 days, but if it's more, I just feel like if they have it, they should be able to deposit it, not hold it.
What would you like us to?
Yeah, what would you designate?
What would you
those?
like as a day?
Say at least 20 days?
Personally, I like a defined day. It's
I
easier.
mean,
Yeah.
just for purposes of, I think
Yes.
we need a defined day.
Yeah.
If we're going to change the 20 days, we need a defined day.
I agree.
Even if we define it as the first day that, I don't know how else you're going to define it if you don't say, it's
No.
got to be a date certain.
And now that the cameras are going to be required to store the footage for 90 days, after they can always open the box earlier.
I mean, I'm okay with extending the time, but I think we need to come up with a time.
The first day the ballots are available?
But
No.
the-
That will work.
That changes.
Well, what's that? I mean,
30
Is
days?
it 30? Is it, I mean, I'd love to know what the staff or representatives from the Secretary of State's office think, given they're the ones that are seeing when things are coming in.
Mr. Rock, do you have any comments? Thoughts?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I think we always try to shoot for sending ballots out as close to a month before the election as possible. In 2020, we sent them out, I believe, on October 5th. The election was November 3rd. So I would say, generally speaking, the first round of ballots, which is the bulk of the mail ballots, will probably arrive in mailboxes sometime the 27th, 26th, 25th day before the election. That's what we always shoot for. We think sending them before that is probably too long and closer is too short.
So does 25 days make sense then?
Yeah, I'd say 25 to 30. I'm fine.
Okay. I mean, I'll move to make it 25 days if you need a motion, if you need
I
a
do.
motion. Okay.
A motion?
I'll move to make it, to increase to
I
20 days.
don't, I mean, this
to
is just
25
going out
days.
for public comment. I think you should take Ms. Johnson's comments and then we could work that in, but I
I
don't
was-
think we have this out for a vote for anything, so we should not vote on
I
it.
was actually just going to ask that the comments made by the members of the board be referred to
Yep.
you for.
Sure.
And then we can incorporate that, Ms. Johnson, into that next draft.
Right.
So we could have 30 days. Then when you meet, if you think it should be 25 or 35, you can then take a vote on it. You'll have some talking point in front of you.
That works. Thank
Okay,
you.
sure.
That's
So we're
helpful,
good.
thank you.
So we're going to change this to 30 days?
I say that.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Any other comment,
And
Mr. Scholes?
one comment. I remember when this came up for discussion a while back, we talked about the drop boxes. But we also talked about having a secured box within each polling station to accept the mail ballots for those voters who decide at the last moment to drop off the mail ballot at the voting station. Because the person who has the mail ballot cannot vote in person, must deposit that mail ballot. So I'll ask Bob, do you think that we should include in this rule a provision that there be a secure lock container at every voting station to accept the mail ballot?
The rule and reg that is in front of you, that's the stated draft, on 1.4A, it is redlined, where a drop box shall also be located within all polling places used in the city and town on election day. That was actually removed after a discussion by the staff. And again, this was a staff-prepared document that is being presented to you because the 413 drop boxes that we actually delivered to each one of those polling places the next day had to be delivered back to the Board of Elections by the cities and towns. Some of the towns, it was not a problem. Let's say East Greenwich, they have 5 polls. But when you have Cranston that has 26 or 27, they were coming back here with all the blue transfer cases that were locked, and a lot of them were never used. And the staff thought on that topic was because they were not used, because of the advertising, the information that is dispensed, that the voters would know to either put the ballot back into the US mail or drop them at one of our drop boxes.
But on election day,
but-
on election day, it's too late to put in the mail.
Correct, but
Right.
but this
But not-
decision is totally, as always, up to you. If you want us to continue the practice that we had going forward, even though our experience was a lot of them were not used.
I'd have to look into that, but my recollection is that we had a statute that allowed for you to surrender the mail ballot and allow you to vote in person.
You
Now,
could.
at that
I
point,
was
you
just
may
gonna
end
ask
up
you that.
getting a HAVA-based ballot, I'm not sure, but you are still, one, I want to research that because I wasn't prepared for that question, but my recollection is that you can still surrender the mail ballot and receive at the very least, a provisional ballot at the voting place.
And I remember we had that discussion, and the question is, who had access to the CRMC or CRBS stuff?
I believe
So-
That's-
temporary
was on the,
It was reviewed.
But can't I
electronic
deposit my ballot
database
in the city of
versus
town
marked off as having
box
received a
anyway
mail.
on election day?
But not vote. Now, if it was designated as voted, then you're right,
Into the machine.
you would be at the Perhaps even then you would receive the provisional ballot because you're claiming that you've never
Very few
voted.
people use it.
But what we're talking about are people who have not cast that ballot, so I assume there will be an electronic indication that it has not been accepted as a ballot received as of that time.
Have access to the database.
Well, that would be up for Bob.
So, Ray, just one question on that note that Dick brings up. If I'm holding my mail ballot on election day and I haven't deposited it yet, I can deposit it in any one of the lock boxes across the state of Rhode Island until 4 o'clock, right? I mean, until the night of the election,
That
until
will-
8 o'clock.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my thought was, see, you said walk up to the voting station, and said, it's my mail ballot,
Mhm.
okay? And what are you gonna do to that person? He's not gonna drive or walk to the city or town hall to deposit that. They'll say, why can't the warden take the mail ballot, the sealed envelope?
The current rule and reg allows that to happen because we did send these blue plastic boxes that locked, that allowed a voter to place their ballot in. Again, the reason in this presentation is that they were not widely used, and it is a cost to get them out, and there is a disadvantage to the local boards to bring them back to the Board of Elections the next day, because they need to get them back to us as soon as possible so we can certify and count those ballots. And
How many would you say, Bob, how many would you have found?
I'm gonna say there were under 1,000. I'm thinking like around 300, 350, which we had over 400 boxes out there in all of those polls.
I think it's a matter of educating the voters what their options are, you know?
And I believe the conversation that Ray and Board Member Scholes was having is that there used to be a citation on the law where if you had a mail ballot and you did not vote it, you could surrender it at the local Board of Canvassers, where you would get a temporary certificate, which would state you turned your ballot into them. Then you could go to the polling place and you could vote your ballot into a machine.
Mhm.
But again, you would have to go to the Board of Canvassers first. When you went to the polling place, you would also do you would do a provisional ballot.
Did you have something, Jenny?
I was just gonna say, you said there was a cost. I was just wondering,
Our
how
cost-
hefty is the
Our
cost?
cost is not large.
Okay.
It is more of the fact
manpower.
that you have all these boxes out in the communities that were not used, that every city and town was required to bring back here by themselves the day after.
I mean, I think the other thought is that in discussing the matter, I think the other issue becomes you have a mail ballot. The purpose of getting the mail ballot is so that you don't go to the poll. And then we're providing a box at the poll to put the ballot in.
Yeah.
I just think as far as I'm concerned, it puts an undue burden on the city or towns. But again, we can discuss that when this comes up.
Would it be helpful in the instructions with the mail ballot to say that it must be either mailed or put into a drop box in your city and cannot be returned to a local voting place, or words to that effect?
I think we're
Somebody
looking at the
looking for it.
instructions right now.
The instructions that will be going with the ballots to the voters for mail ballots is they can return it by mail, which means you can put it into a mail bag, but no postage is necessary. You need to mail it by October 31st to make sure that we receive it by Election Day. All ballots must be received by 8 p.m. by the Board of Elections if it goes through the mail. Drop box. No postage is necessary. Drop your ballot off at any 24-hour drop box in Rhode Island, which addresses the issue you had, and that they must be submitted by 8 p.m. on Election Day. This information goes with the ballots to the voter. It does not say that there is a drop box at the polls.
Should it say that there is
But it
not,
can be,
if we're
if
not
you're,
going to have that?
if you're
think it's
going
confusing.
to adopt that
I do.
into, continue to have that in the current rule and regulations, this will have to be changed before these go out to the voters, to include that there is a drop box at the polling place as well.
Mr. West is now present. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none.
I have a question.
Oh, you have a
Do
question?
you want us to leave that section in the draft that is presented to you today, or would you like us to take it out? The drop box in the polling place. It's currently here. It's just crossed out because it's.
Because you were going to
currently-
eliminate it.
We were going to eliminate
Right.
it. If you don't want us to eliminate it, we will keep it in.
Yeah, I prefer keeping it in. I mean, the whole idea is to make the voting accessible to everyone.
Well, I mean,
And we can't think of how everyone's going to, handle those mail ballots.
I'm not sure
I-
I agree with
Madam-
that.
just
Madam Chair,
think
I-
it doesn't make sense to have a drop
No.
box inside the
Yeah.
polling place.
I think the
Mr.
better
Cascio?
approach would be to take the vote that is posted on the agenda, which is to promulgate the
Yes.
draft reg. And then at the next session, when it comes up for public comment, we could have a full discussion on this as well as a vote on any of these modifications.
Thank you, Mr. Marcaccio. And I'm sure that all of these comments have been taken down and will be considered when this is looked at as well. So I think we've had enough discussion. I think a vote to to begin the promulgation of the public hearing period
I'll move promulgation as presented by the director. and
with the
staff.
comments noted as well. Mr. D. Simone, seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr.
I
West?
know I came late, but I do have a question on this
Sure.
particular thing. As far as drop boxes and damage to drop boxes, I believe we had a case in Cranston where someone vandalized or tried to vandalize the drop box. Is there any type of penalty for doing such?
In the rule and regulation,
Yes,
I do not, there isn't.
well, you should think about that. You're caught vandalizing a drop box. I think there should be some kind of penalty because they get in and possibly destroy ballots. But if damage is done, then I think they should be held responsible and there should be a fine.
Mr. Marcaccio, have you considered that?
I can consider that and talk to Bob about adding in language regarding a misdemeanor or something to that effect.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any further comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, it's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Ray, for keeping us on the right track. Item number 6. The board may discuss and vote to begin the preparation of a rule and regulation for the deposit of mail ballot applications into drop boxes. Mr. Reposo, would you like to address this first?
As you are aware, on June 7th of this year, Governor McKee signed the Let Rhode Island Vote legislation into law, a bond being passed previously by the General Assembly. The bill creates a new section of Rhode Island General Law 17-20-22.1 entitled Mail Ballot Drop Boxes. In addition to codifying the board's rules and regulations regarding mail ballot drop boxes, it also has a provision that the board may create and adopt a rule and regulation, whereas the mail ballot drop boxes could be used for the deposit of mail ballot applications. The staff requests the board's direction on that section of Title 17 as what direction would you like the staff to go to prepare a regulation or to discuss what you would like to see happen.
But just a question, Mr. Reposo. These items take a while to put together, advertise. We need a number of weeks, months. How realistic is it to expect that we could have this prepared for this election period?
It's highly doubtful that it would be prepared for the primary because of the filing requirements,
Right.
the 30-day posting, and that upon your direction, we create the rule and reg and present it back to you for you to approve the posting of it for the 30 days. It could possibly be ready for November, because remember, the drop boxes are in use till 4 p.m. 21 days prior for the mail ballot application. So it could possibly be in place for the November election. My question would also then be to you, because the September primary and the November election is so very close together, would you want to create this potential rule and regulation? Because there is an education to the voters that
Right.
that is required.
That's very true.
Madam Chair, I think there's also a need for more fundamental direction from the board on this. I have spoken to Bob several times about this. We spent quite a bit of time talking about how this could be done. And when you look at the modifications to the elections process through the legislation we're talking about, we have for purposes of this meeting, we have two major modifications. One, with respect to the use of the drop boxes by statute. And by and large, the General Assembly has incorporated the language from our regulation and now enacted it into a legislative act. With respect to the application process, that likewise has been modified to enhance the opportunities for people to obtain their application, which we had in place. First, you could do so in person at the local board. You could do so by mail. And then the new way is through a portal to be prepared by the Secretary of State, so that now the voter can have a third way to introduce or to submit the application electronically. That, as far as I know from Mr. Reposa, is not in place and will not be in place for 2022. The question for the board is, when you look at the statute, there's one place at the very end where the General Assembly has expressed its legislative intent, which is that the board has a discretion to regulate the use of drop boxes for applications. From the questions that the board just asked at the last agenda item, I've had trouble thinking about how one could use the same receptacle for the receipt of a mail ballot and also use that same receptacle for the use of an application. So you have in place in our regulation, the way that you stop people from inserting something after the deadline is to cover the receptacle and to lock it. The application deadline is 21 days prior to the election. If one were to hood that receptacle, you would be defeating the very purpose for having a mail ballot receptacle, because that is the exact time that the voter is going to be using the receptacle for the ballot. That hasn't been worked out amongst the staff. Bob and I have discussed that and many other issues, but that kind of encapsulates the kind of difficulty. And bear in mind that this receptacle that's currently in use is the board. We have done this to make sure that when you send it, just like the vice chair made clear, when you drop in your ballot in Little Compton for your Cranston vote, it's going to be routed out and received. the same is not true for an application. The application by statute must be received by the local board by the deadline, by 4 PM, not 8 PM on election day, but 4 PM, 21 days prior. The mechanics of using one receptacle, for me, it escapes me how you can do that. Now, you could create another receptacle that is owned by the local board so that you don't have people dropping those applications in Providence at Kennedy Plaza, assuming that the same rule is going to apply as it does for a ballot, thinking, well, if I put my application in here for Little Compton, even though I've just dropped it, I've gone to work at City Hall in Providence, it's going to make its way back. That would be, you would be imposing another burden on the local board to somehow create an inter-community courier service to make sure that it goes from 4 PM, 21st day before the election, over to the community that should have received it, stamped and received, or in some other way documented when it comes out. All of these things just have to be worked out. I don't know if, I don't see how that is feasible for the primary of 22. I don't even see how it's feasible for the general election, but that is certainly, from the legal perspective, I just have not determined how you can effectuate this. If the staff can think of that perhaps in the next month, so be it, but it's a daunting task to do at this point.
Understood. I'm wondering if maybe we give the staff time to, I mean, we have a bunch of very bright people here. Maybe they can come up with some other way, or as Ray suggested, perhaps another type of receptacle. But I would like to avoid any confusion, so yeah, it does have its difficulties. Did you want to say something?
Just from the standpoint of the application process, the legislation says we may, correct, right?
That's correct.
There's no requirement, number one. And number two, this would really be the only area that the board would be involving itself in the application process.
Right,
Because right
generally.
now, we're not involved in the application process at all, correct?
That is a local function, and also the secretary has the ability to receive them by mail as well as by the soon, or, at some point, the portal that will be initiated.
So my concern would be that we would be now assuming a responsibility in the application process that I think, at least for as long as I can remember, has been the realm of the local board and the Secretary of State. So I wouldn't want to do that, particularly now. But again, I defer to my colleagues on the board as to how you want to do this.
Mrs. Johnson, you had something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I remember when this came before us and have since learned more about it, since we did vote it down initially when it came up last election. I am coming from the standpoint of that we have the drop boxes. We've learned a lot. I think I understand the September and the, slim possibility of November, but I do think this is something we should eventually figure out how to do. And as are people dropping them in the drop boxes currently, applications? And well, I bet they are. And if so, how many?
They're locked.
Like, what's the
The
bulk?
boxes are locked, correct?
The slot is open. So they could drop them in. The boxes, though, as you are aware, say Board of Elections for mail ballots. So when the city I can't speak for the city and town because I don't know exactly what they do, but if they were to take an application out that was theirs before the 21st day at 4 PM, I'm sure they would process it. I don't know what they would do as far as getting the application to any other Board of Canvassers in the state and any other of the other 38 communities.
Yeah.
I don't know what they actually will do in that situation.
Yeah.
And then, as Ray mentioned, the drop boxes do say per statute that they are for mail ballots. And what do we do to be able to address that? I mean, again, does it go, when we bought the current drop boxes, it was around $85,000.
Yeah.
And we are already on the second edition of signage on those boxes.
Understood.
But I mean, that's, right now, what you asked, what they do, I'm not aware. I'm sure that they have found applications in them. I don't know what the volume would be.
Any other comments by board members on this issue?
I think it's something that should be thought out before we take that responsibility on, to see exactly how it can work out and whether or not we want to take that responsibility. If not, then I think maybe we should change the wording so that it only says possibly that completed or filled out ballots, not ballot requests, but filled out ballots for the Dropbox only. Something to that effect maybe, but just so that there's no confusion.
I also think that a conversation with the local boards would be helpful to find out exactly what, if there has been any confusion to this. You know, if people have put their applications in the drop boxes. I'd like to know that.
Yeah, I'd like to see something come back before us where the staff can have some conversations and put more information before us as to the feasibility of this and what people more, in more detail think about this. Because I do think it's, you know, there's proactivity and reactivity to this, and it'd be great to have more of an understanding of the feasibility.
So would you like a motion then to refer this back to staff for more study, or how would you like to handle this at this point?
And yes, and I would say soon, given the time constraints.
Okay. We have a motion to refer this back to staff for their review. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. West. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. Appreciate your insights into that too, Ms. Marcascio. Thank you. Item number 7, the board may vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 4246(5) subsection A4 and 1725(5) subsection A7I to discuss and/or vote on campaign finance investigation in one campaign finance matter. Do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair, seconded by Mrs. Johnson. We're going into executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous at 3:05.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, but I think it's, you know, such
Somebody's phone's ringing. Where did he come from? Did you bring him in?
Came all the way up from Portsmouth.
Wanted to go for a ride.
Again, I
Okay, do we have a motion to resume open session and seal the minutes of the executive session? Moved by Mr. Scholes,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Mr. Mercatio, would you summarize
Yes,
the
I-
action taken?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. There was one matter discussed in executive session involving Gerard C. Catala. The Campaign Finance Unit Director, Richard Thornton, presented a summary of his findings of a audit that he performed, after which the board voted by motion made by Board Member DeSimone to find a reason to believe that there have been violations of the campaign finance laws under Title 17, Chapter 25 of the general laws, seconded by Board Member Johnson. All members present, all 6 members present voted in favor, none opposed. The motion was adopted. Then Board Member Johnson moved to refer, I apologize, Board Member West moved to refer the matter to the Attorney General for further consideration, investigation, prosecution if possible. And that was seconded by Board Member DeSimone. All 6 members present voted in favor, none opposed. The motion carried.
Thank
That
you.
is it.
Thank you, Ms. Mercatio. We have no further business this afternoon. Do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting? So moved. Moved by Mr. DeSimone, seconded by Mr. Scholes. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. At 3:30, we are adjourned. Thank you, Rick.
You're welcome.